Good evening and welcome to Panorama, Syrian news. We begin our headlines with a report about a trilateral roadmap in Sweida. Sweida has come to the forefront of events after the announcement of a three-way roadmap between Syria, Jordan and the United States, aimed at restoring stability following rounds of bloody conflict last July. The plan includes pursuing those inciting violence, securing international roads, facilitating the return of displaced people, and improving basic services. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has welcomed this initiative, considering it an important step towards stabilizing southern Syria. The arrangements for this matter involved U.S. envoy Thomas Barak, Jordanian Minister Safadi, and the Foreign Minister of the Syrian Transitional Authority, Ahmed Al-Sharaa. In this context, we ask the politician Ahmed Al-Sharaa, do you see a solution to the Syrian crisis on the horizon? And is the Syrian Transitional Authority legally authorized to sign any international peace memorandums?
What is happening today is an attempt to steal the Syrian decision-making process through an unelected and illegitimate authority that was brought in, even though we are classified as terrorists so that we can be blackmailed by influential countries in the region. The Syrian people are powerless. They have not been allowed to elect an authority, hold elections, write a constitution, or anything else. There is international manipulation of the Syrian decision after the massacres that took place. There was the Sweida agreement, which was then taken to the United Nations to become international, even though it was an internal agreement, as a prelude to putting other agreements before the United Nations, foremost among them the security agreement with Israel, which cancels Resolution 242 and considers the border between Syria and Israel to be the 1974 border. This means giving up the Golan. It is astonishing that the Golanese are classified as terrorists and are under sanctions so that they will sign this, and he is ready to sign because he does not believe in a homeland. He is a global jihadist, does not believe in a state or a homeland, has not conducted national dialogue nor involved people in authority. He is a jihadist organizer brought in to sell out the will of the Syrian people. This is my opinion. Therefore, I call on the United Nations not to recognize anything signed by the interim authority that was brought in through an international agreement and not by the will of the Syrian people. This is a blatant theft of the will of the people and the rights of the Syrian state. Unfortunately, this is a gateway to war, not a gateway to peace. What is happening now is the continued violation of Syria after it was violated in the name of Bashar Assad by Russia and Iran, and today it is being violated by America, Israel, and other influential countries. Unfortunately, the United Nations is complicit in this crime. Therefore, I call for non-recognition and non-acceptance of anything signed by this illegitimate regime.
In the second segment of this panorama, Syrian-Israeli talks are taking place with American mediation in a sensitive political and security context. This month, there has been an intensification of unofficial talks between Syrian and Israeli officials under American pressure and sponsorship. Reports speak of an Israeli proposal to establish a demilitarized zone extending across 3 areas, including a no-fly zone in southern Syria that would cover the entire Sweida province. There have also been rumors about the possibility of an official meeting between the two sides on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly meetings in New York. This meeting may be preceded by a Senate vote on including the cancellation or suspension of the Caesar Act in the U.S. defense budget, a topic that investigative journalist Issam Khoury discussed in detail on the Geopolitics program, along with some analysis.
In the Senate, there is something different in 2 projects. We will understand what happened in them. First, let's say basically in the defense budget project, which is Adamu Sendat Roger Wicker, which is S2006, the defense budget summary. He made an amendment to it in addition to Senator Jack Ryder, a Democrat and a Republican. The amendment is SA 3748. Its main purpose in the Senate is to amend the resolution regarding the repeal of the Caesar Act and the defense budget so that it passes through the rest of the chambers, meaning the House of Representatives and the White House. Now, the very important event is that Senator Lenza, the very well-known Republican, and Senator Chris Van Holler, the Democratic senator, worked on a new amendment called SA 3889. Their purpose is a conditional suspension of the Caesar Act and linked it to a 180-day certification submitted by the Syrian government. to be repeated twice, and then, if the Syrian government does not implement the required conditions, then the Caesar Act will return again.
The arrival of Ahmed Al-Sharaa at the United Nations General Assembly headquarters is also an important event for Syrians, as it sparked controversy among Syrians. The supporters announced the organization of a welcoming event for him in front of the United Nations headquarters, featuring singers and vocalists who support the Syrian revolution, such as Wasfi al-Masran, and, of course, we tried to get a statement from them, but they preferred not to give any statement to any media outlet in order to ensure the largest possible number of participants in this event. Any statement from them could lead to a media attack by opponents of Ahmed Al-Sharaa. Dareen, do you think they will succeed?
There is a sharp division in America among the Syrian sectarian and ethnic groups regarding Ahmed Al-Sharaa. This will ensure a large number of Syrians supporting him, especially among the simpler segments who see him more as a Sunni leader than as a president for all Syrians. So far, we have information that buses are coming from several American states to participate in this event. We just hope it doesn't rain.
It's sad that Syrian expatriates take more pride in their sect than in their Syrian identity.
It is sad, but from our observation of the invitation messages sent by the group organizing the event, we repeatedly noticed a disciplined spirit and an effort to respect the opinions of those who differ from them. However, this is not necessarily the case among the general public who come to celebrate. For example, Ahmed Al-Sharaa declined to attend the event due to fears of being monitored by the American government, especially if he is still in the process of seeking political asylum and has not yet obtained American citizenship. The United States could deport them from America, as they are not considered threatened by the government they praise, especially since the Trump administration recently approved amendments to the American citizenship test, imposing stricter procedures to ensure integration and commitment to American values for anyone seeking American citizenship.
Yes, there is currently widespread strictness in the American Immigration Office, and what's strange today is that Syrians who support Assad have become more eligible for political asylum than former opponents of Bashar al-Assad's regime. Here, we would like to ask Pastor Asberdan Tanus from Sweden for his opinion. Father Asberdan, greetings to you. The pro-Ahmed Al-Sharaa Syrian-American community is organizing a solidarity rally during his speech at the United Nations. In your opinion, is such a rally justified as long as he is still in the transitional phase?
God be with you. In order to answer the question and give my opinion on the position of the Syrian community in America that supports Al-Sharaa, it is necessary to point out that we expected the ruling assembly to be open to change, but it turned out to be a de facto authority implementing a basic installation agenda in the new Mazar, which is neither constitutional nor elected nor specialized, and it does not have the right to represent the country. It has a dark history with the opposition and those who started the revolution. Anyone who supports such an authority is supporting the transition of the country from a dictatorial concept to the concept of a state of the strong. In my personal opinion, no one has the right to support an unelected authority, and according to the statistics, these supporters do not even constitute a Syrian minority.
In any case, opponents of Ahmed Al-Sharaa are also organizing a sit-in in front of the United Nations building, as they consider him an illegitimate president. They also describe him as a terrorist, based on his past in Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra, and accuse him of being directly responsible for the massacres in the coastal region and against the Druze, which targeted authentic Syrian minorities within Syrian society. On this matter, we host Bassam Sakar, a member of the Syrian Democratic Council from Washington. Mr. Bassam, greetings to you.
Ahmad talks about a transition, but unfortunately he sets the duration of this transitional phase at 5 years, which is a long period. Usually countries elect a president for 4 years in a precise and transparent democratic transition. Here, I don't think he represents the Syrians. He represents a specific narrow group, namely Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, along with some factions that were with him in Idlib. As for the second question and the comparison between Assad the son and Ahmad, Assad the son ruled in a Ba'athist security-based manner. that is, a security Ba'athist dictatorship in all ministries and government departments. He was a dictator in every sense of the word and committed massacres, of course. As for Ahmad, his tyranny is of another kind. It is also religious tyranny. But the difference is that he committed massacres in the early period. That is, after 2 or 3 months, he committed them in the coastal region and in Sweida. Another difference is that his tyranny is not security-based in the literal sense, but he also controls all the ministries and government departments through the sheikhs he appointed in those areas. In other words, we have replaced Ba'athist security tyranny with religious tyranny. Absolutely.
Let me get back to you, Abbas. We see that the opposition community staged a protest against Ahmed Al-Sharaa, expressing solidarity with the victims of the massacres in the coastal region and Sweida. This clearly shows the state of social division in Syria. In your opinion, should the Christian community, which is known for its neutrality, get involved in these disputes, or should it act as a bridge connecting all components of Syrian society?
Historically, yes, the Christian community has acted as a bridge. But today, let's move away from theorizing and talk about the facts. How can a religious group that is itself targeted for its very existence be a bridge of communication? With the original Sunni Syrians, we don't need bridges. We already coexist. But any communication with an authority that has a fundamentally extremist background and considers me an infidel is pointless at this time. Now, the average Christian is simply looking for a way to survive in the face of the brutality of those in power. The church leaders are weak or oppressed, unable to protect their communities from killings and violations. As a result, Christians are looking for ways to emigrate. This is the reality, plain and simple. So who can really act as a bridge now?
Israeli airstrikes on September 8 targeted sites in Rabbah, Homs, Latakia, and Palmyra. Syrian media blamed Israel, while Tel Aviv remained silent as usual. The strikes have raised fears of a new escalation on the Syrian scene, especially since Israeli drones are constantly present in the skies over southern Syria and the Syrian coast. Israel and the United States also conducted military exercises off the Syrian coast, in an area known to be under Syrian and Russian influence. Brigadier General Ahmad Rahal pointed out in a broadcast that there are significant concerns that could affect the Syrian coast, especially since the Israelis have deployed a missile system in Greek Cyprus.
The commander of the U.S. Central Command visited the presidential palace after the Russians amid suspicious American and Israeli military maneuvers and movements off the Syrian coast. Of course, Admiral Brad Cooper's visit, accompanied by Trump's envoy, Tom Barrack, to Damascus is happening for the first time. There have been many visits to Syria, but to Eastern Euphrates, this visit is not unique, even though it was described as a family visit. In fact, it was the fourth stop in a tour that started in Kurdistan, moved to Eastern Euphrates, where they met General Mazloum Abdi, then to Tel Aviv, and from there to Damascus. So, what's the story behind the Israeli missile boats stationed and anchored off the Syrian coast and the activation of the Eilat base? What's the story behind the Israeli air defense systems being installed in Cyprus? And why did the president of Syria talk about the coast before his meeting with the U.S. Central Command leader? Also, what is the story of the message that the Israeli commander brought to Damascus? Are the visits to Kurdistan and Eastern Euphrates an American message to Ankara? And is Damascus now caught between the jaws of the Russians and the Americans and their conflicting interests? And why did the family photo that appeared showing the Syrian president, Brad Cooper, and both their wives seem somewhat tense?
On the economic front, there is Saudi support for the energy sector as a step to support the damaged Syrian economy. Saudi Arabia announced the delivery of 1,650,000 barrels of crude oil to Syria. This shipment will be directed to operate the refineries and alleviate the fuel crisis which has affected electricity, water, and transportation. What do you think, Kadrin? Will electricity improve in Syria?
Certainly, Saudi efforts are clear in their attempt to prop up Ahmed Al-Shara's government as a newly established administration. However, in reality, this type of support does not indicate sustainability or confidence from an economic perspective. For example, neither Saudi Arabia nor Qatar has deposited large working funds into the Syrian state treasury. Instead, they provide financial grants intermittently to ensure oversight of spending mechanisms and to guarantee that Ahmed Al-Shara's government remains loyal to them and to their economic and political choices. The dilemma is that these wealthy Gulf states are competing among themselves and each has its own interests.
The United Nations Security Council sessions concerning the ongoing situation in Syria comprehensively addressed both the critical political and the urgent humanitarian tracks, as well as the deeply concerning issue of chemical weapons. Simultaneously, numerous incidents of tragic casualties caused by dangerous unexploded ordnance were meticulously recorded in the regions of Idlib and Daraa, starkly highlighting the persistent and profound dangers of the protracted war.
It is notable that there is coordination with the state of Qatar following the Israeli airstrikes in Doha, which failed to assassinate Hamas leaders who are listed on the US terrorism lists.
The decline of Syrian asylum to Europe. The European Asylum Agency published a report showing a significant decrease in Syrian asylum applications compared to 2024. Experts attribute this to tighter border controls as well as a decrease in the number of people leaving from inside Syria.
Certainly, this is a positive development, and we hope for stability in Syria and for skilled individuals to return in order to rebuild this devastated country.
To conclude with our last news item, we have received from the Iranian community opposed to the Velayat-e-Faqih regime an open invitation to participate in a protest against the speech of the Iranian president on September 23rd, that is, in 2025, at the United Nations.
This is a very important message to all the esteemed members of the Arab community residing in the United States of America, and a heartfelt invitation for each and every one of them to actively participate in the significant demonstrations that are scheduled to take place in the vibrant city of New York on the 23rd of September, and also on the 24th of September, directly in front of the prominent United Nations headquarters. These demonstrations are organized in strong protest against the official Iranian regime's continued presence at the United Nations General Assembly meetings this current year. The nature of this protest this year is distinctly different and more urgent compared to previous years because over the past 2 years, and particularly intensely during the last year, the Iranian regime has demonstrably lost much of its strategic depth and its various proxies throughout the entire region, and consequently it has undeniably become a significantly weakened regime. More importantly, this oppressive regime is now confronting a massive, widespread popular uprising against its rule right at home within its own borders. At the same time, there is now a viable and compelling alternative to this regime, which is being increasingly recognized and supported by the National Council of Resistance of Iran, an organization that proposes a thoughtful and effective third way, neither engaging in external war nor continuing the policy of appeasement with this regime, but rather resolutely relying on the powerful Iranian people's movement and its well-organized resistance. Therefore, we sincerely invite all of you to participate and show your unwavering solidarity with the brave Iranian people in this crucial demonstration. Thank you very much for your attention and anticipated participation.
Announcement at the beginning of the month regarding the official launch of this comprehensive National Reconstruction Fund. This pivotal step was not only announced but was also accompanied by widespread discussions and optimistic pronouncements about a gradual yet steady economic recovery, signaling a potential turning point for the region. This optimism is further bolstered by recent American indications suggesting a willingness to ease some existing trade restrictions, a move that could have far-reaching positive consequences. Such a relaxation of trade barriers has the potential to significantly pave the way for a partial yet substantial return of much-needed capital and investment into the country, thereby stimulating economic growth and development. However, a fundamental and pressing question still remains. Will the government ultimately succeed in its efforts to secure the necessary international loans and financial backing to fully realize the ambitious goals of this reconstruction fund and sustain the nascent economic recovery?
Yes, perhaps the amount is very meager compared to the country's needs, but it is an initiative that is close to those of civil society, and the state needs to think differently. Raising funds should not be done through carnivals and public parties, but rather through a successful and balanced tax policy. This is not the case in Syria because institutions have not been able to impose their authority on society in a successful participatory manner. For example, the judiciary is still almost paralyzed today, and problems are solved through social dignitaries or local councils. Many of those harmed by the Assad regime have not received their rights, most notably the former parliamentarian Mamun al-Homsi.
Beloved Syrian people, thank you for your noble efforts and your keenness to recover the money stolen by Assad and his gangs, as long as you place the trust in your hands. Among the hardships I have endured, and I address President Al-Sharaa directly, I ask him to take up the case of the prisoners of conscience, the prisoners of Adra in Damascus, who sacrificed their lives, souls, and wealth for the freedom of the Syrian people and for Syria's freedom. I hope he will take up this case without supervision, guardianship, or interference and handle it himself, because there is something shameful and disgraceful in moving from a state of exclusion to a state of revenge. There is no country in the world where a revolution triumphs and the fighters are punished. I place this issue in the hands of the Syrian people so that justice and truth may be achieved. Thank you, thank you.